Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you immigration law on your side.
All right, thank you for joining us once again on Immigration Law on Your Side. From Las Vegas, ako po si Kuya Yo dito sa PHLV Radio Studio. And kasama na naman natin si Attorney FJ Diza from San Francisco, California. Mga kaibigan, especially those here in Las Vegas, magandang pag-uusapan natin ngayon kasi tungkol po ito sa J-1 visa. As you know, many people are coming to the United States on an exchange visitor visa or otherwise known as J-1 visa. These individuals were approved to participate in work and study-based exchange visitor programs in the United States. So with us tonight again is FJ Diza of Reeves Immigration Law Group to shed light on the J-1 visa. You know, the requirements, the application process, at saka yung mga restrictions din, syempre. And the eligibility to study and work and the possibility of obtaining a green card and other issues regarding the J-1 visa. So i-welcome na po natin si Attorney Diza from San Francisco, California. Magandang gabi po sa iyo, Attorney Diza.
Magandang gabi, Kuya Johan. At siyempre, batiin na rin natin ang mga nanonood at nakikinig sa atin ng magandang gabi, magandang hapon, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat, saan man po kayo. At as you mentioned, very interesting and educational ang ating pag-usapan dahil ito hindi lang mga teachers kundi mga students at saka mga trainees din, Kuya Johan, mga medical doctors. You know, very important po ang ating discussion ngayong gabi at samahan niyo po kami. At kung may mga katanungan sila, pwede sila magtanong sa message lang po tayo as we discuss itong ating pag-usapan ngayong gabi.
So give us a little background, Attorney, kung ano itong J-1 visa, kailan ito nagsimula at sino po ang pwedeng magkaroon ng mga J-1 visa?
Ang J-1, Kuya Johan, is a non-immigrant. So hindi ito siya green card. They're coming here on a temporary basis. For those people who have an approved program, to attend an approved program accredited by the Department of State to either, as you mentioned, to either study, teach, lecture, train, pwede rin silang attend ng school, medical school, or training. And then the purpose of this, Kuya Yo, is to interchange people, skills, and knowledge and between the United States and the other countries. Now, so basically, it is the duty of the Department of State under the U.S. Embassy, para sa atin sa Pilipinas, to approve yung mga accredited programs na yan. So before anyone can apply for a J-1, kailangan po muna nilang magtingin na mga programs online, usually nasa USCIS website or sa Department of State website, kung ano po yung mga private and public accredited programs. Kasi, Kuya Johan, siyempre hindi lang ito sa mga schools, kundi mga employers din, prospective employers, either a corporation, a company, or even individuals para sa mga nannies. So may mga accredited po dyan, and then once that is approved, then they have to apply with the Department of State through the embassy to apply for the J-1 visa.
Bahagyang nabanggit niyo, Attorney, yung iba't ibang profession, so to speak, or responsibilities pagdating niyo dito sa Amerika, kung saan pwede kayo magkaroon ng J-1. Nabanggit niyo, Attorney, yung nasa medical field, mga physicians. Ano pa po ba, Attorney? At dito sa Las Vegas, napakarami mga teachers, Attorney, na under J-1 visa. So what are the other mga professions, Attorney, na pwedeng magkaroon ng J-1?
Very common, Kuya Johan, as you mentioned, mga teachers or professors, teachers sa grade school, middle school, high school, even college, mga professors, kasama din yan. Kasama din yan, Kuya Johan, ang mga nannies, yung mga they're coming here to take care of children. Pwede rin trainees, yung mga usually mga hospitality industry, right? Especially mga graduates ng hotel and restaurant management. Marami sa atin dyan nag-apply. Lalo na pag nag-open ng either ski season, right, mga resort, or summer season, dyan naman sa mga beach dyan sa Florida, marami sa kanila ang under J-1, right, mga hotels, training, mga hotel industries, marami sa kanila dyan. And also students, Kuya Johan, kasama sila dyan, and also people who are coming here to study, continue the medical training or education. So very if they are not qualified for the H-1B, itong mga professional workers, pwede rin sila mag-apply dito sa J-1. Mas komplikado ng konti ang J-1 dahil pag-usapan natin mamaya, may mga restrictions yan, at hindi pwede mag-change ng status o mag-adjust ng status, especially kung mayroong mga restrictions na pag-usapan natin later on.
And as per definition, nabanggit nyo kanina, attorney, ang J-1 visa ay exchange visitor program. Attorney, just very briefly, bakit sinabing exchange? Ano yung ine-exchange dito? Mga tao, culture, or expertise? Ano po yung mga na-exchange dito between the two countries?
Yes, that's why it's called a J-1 exchange visitor, Kuya Johan. Visitor in the sense that it is kind of temporary, exchange in the sense that, two countries, the United States and, for example, the Philippines, will interchange people, the people coming here, their ideas, Kuya Johan, they're coming here to be trained kung paano bang school dito, paano ba turo mga tao dito, or mag-aral. So exchange of person, ideas, culture, and knowledge. So, and also it's very important, one of the conditions, dun sa mga J-1 is to go back to the home country and share paano po yung kanilang experience at nag-gain na knowledge dito sa US.
Maganda, no? Is this reciprocal, attorney? Yung kunwari, Amerikano din sa Pilipinas to gain knowledge there, tapos babalik din dito?
Meron din, Kuya Johan, counterpart, usually ng Philippine visa. So they have to apply at the consulate or the embassy as well.
Okay. Nabanggit yung attorney yung pag-a-apply. Walk us through the process of applying for a J-1 visa, attorney.
So unang-una, kailangang identify kung anong program po kayo mag-fit in, di ba? So kung medical doctor kayo, syempre either hospital ang hanapin nyo. Merong listahan po dyan. You can just search it sa US Embassy website o USCIS. You search the J-1 program at yung mga accredited programs, mga institutions or individuals na pwede kayo mag-apply. And then there are certain forms that you need to fill out. You have to work closely with the prospective employer or prospective school to get that approval. So once you have those documents approved, then you have to apply like an ordinary, visa, Kuya Johan, sa embassy. Mag-schedule po kayo ng appointment dyan sa embassy and prepare prepare your documents and the forms that bring it to the embassy at your interview. So as of now, it's still pandemic, and we all know that the Philippines nagkaroon na naman ng ECQ, right? So very limited na naman po ang mga interviews ngayon. So but once it reopens, mag-schedule lang po kayo ng interview kagaya ng ibang applications, kagaya ng tourist visa and H-1Bs or even immigrant visa, Kuya Johan. And then they go to attend the interview and be prepared. Once that is issued, binibigyan usually sila, depende sa program, usually pag student yan, 2-year course yan, 4-year course, or depende rin sa kanilang kontrata, as a school teacher, 2 years, 3 years. As short as 8 months, Kuya Johan, yung magtatrabaho sa mga resort as we mentioned, and as long as 5 years ang binibigay sa mga J-1s.
Marami na kagad sigurado ang gustong magtanong regarding our topic. Isa sa mga ibinato sa atin, attorney, when we mentioned this topic to our listeners is itong presence of agencies that are talking to them. When you say you are looking for prospective programs in the United States, kunwari nasa Philippines ka or any other part of the world, are there agencies that can represent these programs and you deal with the agencies rather than dealing directly with the school or the employer itself, attorney?
Yes, Kuya Yon, just be careful na wag tayong magpa-loko sa mga fake na agencies. Make sure that these agencies are accredited. Mostly people coming here, Kuya Johan, may mga agents yan or may mga accredited agencies as well because, basically they know what they're doing, right? And they know what are the requirements as long as these are reputable agencies or legal representation or immigration law firms, you are okay, you're allowed to be assisted by these agencies. Just be careful, as we mentioned, look at the website kung ano po ang reputation ng inyong hinahire na agency.
And as this is a non-immigrant visa, as you said, attorney, does the same rule apply? Yung mga requirements, your ties to your home country, yung mga ganon na kailangan ma-prove mo pa rin na you're really going back to the Philippines?
That's correct. During the initial conversation natin kanina, J1 is an immigrant visa, kagaya ng tourist visa, H1Bs, which is what we call temporary, right? Temporary visa. You still have to prove that you have a very strong ties sa Pilipinas. So kahit may approved program na po kayo, na-approve na kayo ng employer to come to the US, ready na lahat mga documentations, embassy would still, look at your status. What are your, ties in the Philippines, and are you likely to overstay? So pwede ka pa rin i-deny dyan sa, what do you call it, sa embassy, just because they found out that, your purpose really here is not to be on a J1, exchange visitor, but also, but to finding ways to, what do you call it, getting your green card in the United States. So hindi po, just make sure that you're prepared also that, that you have those documentations, strong ties such as family, right? Kung mayroon kayong asawa, may anak, minor children, meron kayong mga properties din sa Pilipinas na kapangalan sa inyo, or may business kayo. So those are the documents that embassy is looking when they evaluate your J1, whether or not you have a ties in the Philippines na babalikan mo.
And it's very nice that people come to the United States for exchange in culture, to learn things, how they are here in the United States, and share it with their home country. But of course, while you're here, you have to be able to sustain yourself. You have to be able to have employment. So let's talk a little bit about employment, attorney. So when you come over here, it's either that you're looking for employment, or as you said, as a student. Kung sa employment muna, attorney, how does it work? Obviously, you're allowed to work here in the United States to pay for your stay here, and the program requirements as well. Ano pa po ba ang ibang, may mga restrictions po ba as far as employment is concerned? Are you allowed to work in another company, or you're only allowed to work at that company for which the program is at, attorney?
That's a really good question, Kuya Johan, because like other non-immigrant employment base, kagaya ng L1 or H1Bs, mga professional workers, these are employer-driven. So like H1Bs and L1s, very specific yan, Kuya Johan. Generally, you can only work with the sponsor, ang tawag sa kanila sa J1 sponsor, hindi kagaya ng H1B petitioners. That's only required unless you get an exemption from the Department of Homeland Security, right, to work elsewhere. But definitely the good thing about working, if you're coming here to work, you're being paid the minimum wage or the prevailing wage, right? Hindi ka pwedeng bayaran na mas mura or mas maliit doon sa mga US workers. So they have to follow yung mga prevailing wage. So if you're a teacher in Las Vegas, usually siyempre kung ano yung commensurate to your education and experience, right? Kung ano yung sponsor ka dyan to teach or to lead or to supervise, siyempre nandun yung lahat yun sa prevailing wage on the Department of Labor. So you're being paid the prevailing wage to sustain yourself. And that's really a good thing, Kuya Johan. And not only that, we haven't mentioned that yet, but to sustain your family, if you have family with you, right, pwede mo ring i-apply yung inyong asawa at minor children for work authorization. Yung I-765, pwede rin sila magtrabaho so that the whole family can work if they're able to.
Oh, that's amazing. So, anong derivative visa J2, attorney?
Correct. J2 visa, they're entering here on a J2 that includes spouse and minor children, right, below 21, Kuya Johan. So, they are able to obtain the work authorization. Probably the spouse can find a work, another employment on kahit saang business. And also the children can go to school, right? Mga public schools without getting a student visa if they are below 21, or they can as well, apply for employment with their work authorization.
Now that the husband or the wife, the J2 holder, hindi naman siya kadikit doon sa program nung kanyang asawa, then he could work anywhere, attorney?
That's correct. Yes, they can work anywhere, apply for a job elsewhere. And also even put up a business, Kuya Johan, pwede rin yun.
Oh, pati business pwede. Wow.
Yes. Yes, because they have a social security and their kind of status in the U.S. is, they have a legal status rather in the United States.
That's amazing. However, may term limit lang, as Attorney Diza outlined a while ago, may mga requirements, and one of which is to go home in the Philippines. So hindi ito pang forever. Unless we're going to talk later on, there are other ways like na ma-waive yung 2-year requirement. We'll talk about that later on. But in the meantime, Attorney, usually ito po bang J-1 visa, when you're given this, usually how many years ang unang binibigay?
Depende sa nature ng program, Kuya Johan. It could be as short as 8 months. Right?
Oh, wow.
And mga, what do you call this, mga workers sa resort or yung seasonal ba, right? Let's say ski time or summertime, or as far back as 5 years, pwede as longer as 5 years. Pwedeng extend rather 2 years, and pwedeng extend up to 5 years rather. So you have plenty of time, in case you intend to apply for green card, while you're here and decided to stay here, and you think that this is a good, better place for you, and your employer is willing to petition for you. 5 years is a long time if you're able to extend yung inyong J-1.
Now, for those who are in school naman, pumunta dito, ang program nila involves going to school. For example, pursuing higher education, like for example, masteral degree or any other postgraduate degrees that have been offered on that program. So, yung duration ng kanyang stay dito would be also kamukha nung kung gaano kahaba yung program na yon.
That's correct, Kuya Johan. So master's degree usually takes about 2 years, then you have the 2 years. So usually ang bibigay sa'yo is duration of status, depende sa program as you mentioned, whether that's going to be 1 semester, 2 semester, or the full 2 years, schooling.
Can it be extended, Attorney? Like for example, nasa school ka, medyo kailangan mong another semester, for example. Medyo humaba yung mga credits na kailangan mong kunin. Pwedeng ma-extend?
Yes, that's possible, Kuya Johan. There are situations, unforeseen events, di ba? Yung act of God or force majeure where, nakahinto ka, or instead of you getting the full units in a semester, di ba? Ilan lang ang nakuha mong units because you got sick, or, nagkaroon ng COVID at, stop yung schooling, right? So, posibleng extend yan, Kuya Johan. It's rather a duration of status. Sometimes you don't even have to file an extension anymore kasi nakikita naman sa program that this is a duration, the duration ng schooling mo kung kailan ka matatapos ng program.
Okay. And, while you're here, like what we always say, life happens, and baka nagkaroon ng mga opportunity to be petitioned by another employer or another way for you to be able to get an immigrant visa. Are you allowed, Attorney, like what we mentioned before, yung dual intent, are you allowed to have a petition, say for example at I-140, while you are on a J-1 visa here in the United States?
Well, as we mentioned, this is an immigrant. No, ang intent mo dapat is to go back to your home country and share knowledge and expertise and what you have, acquired knowledge in the U.S. to your home country. That's basically the rule. But as you mentioned, things happen. Nakahanap ka ng forever love mo. You get married, right? And you find an employer and he likes your job and offers you benefits that you cannot refuse. The thing is, if these situations come after you enter, that's okay, right? Kasi yung intent mo naman really is to go home. But as you're here in the US, nagbago na yung intent mo, that's allowed, Kuya Johan, right? Na magkaroon ka ng petition, right? Either as a spouse petition, family petition, or employment petition, as long as, while in the United States, rather, pwedeng mag-file or pwedeng may mga applications na naka-file sa iyo.
To eventually probably apply for a green card. Attorney, on top of the program, we told everybody that there is this 2-year residency requirement. Now, before you can even think about adjusting to another status, do you have to have this requirement waived first before you can adjust to another status? And more so, mapaliwanag natin, attorney, kung ano itong 2-year residency requirement in the first place.
Karamihan sa mga J1 or J2, Kuya Johan, mayroong restrictions, right? Or they need to be very careful kasi kahit sabihin natin na they'll come here for only for 8 months, it's hard for them to extend, to change its status or adjust its status kung meron yung restrictions na yan. Just because, as we mentioned, itong J1 na to is exchange. You're coming here to acquire knowledge, to acquire, the expertise, to get educated, and you're required to go home to your home country kasi this is United States, di ba? We all know that lahat dito medyo advanced. And of course, sa mga kagaya natin sa Pilipinas na, developing countries, and we want to share them how we do it here. So you're required to do that, to go home and share your expertise. That's why mostly ang mga J1, Kuya Johan, ay binibigyan ng 2 years. Di ba? Huwag ka muna mag-stay sa Amerika, bumalik ka naman sa home country mo and share that knowledge and expertise. So binibigyan ng 2 taon para makabalik ulit sila dito. Right? So mostly sa mga clients namin, Kuya Johan, under J1, pumapasok sila dito and how to adjust its status, how to waive that 2-year residency requirement. Now, bakit kinakailangan ng 2 years residency requirement? Just because, as we mentioned, the nature ng J1 itself, to exchange visitor and go back. Now, usually yan, Kuya Johan, may restriction yan unang-una kung ito ay government-funded. So, either government-funded ng United States or funded ng home country. So, kailangan na bumalik ka sa home country mo. Or, ito yung mga medical professionals or doctors who are coming here to train and be educated. So, sinasabi na, doctor ka, bumalik ka sa home country mo and share your experience and education sa home country mo. Pangatlo, Kuya Johan, ay yung mga skilled, tawag nito, mayroong list of skills, di ba? So, let's say, architect ka, and you're specializing on something na you're employed or went to school, learning a specialization, kailangan pa rin bumalik kasi may mga listahan din yan. But usually, Kuya Johan, what we tell our clients is look at your visa. Right? Look at your visa kasi nakatatak po dyan doon sa visa mo, J1 visa, subject to 212E. Ibig sabihin, ng INA 212E is yung 2 years home residency requirement. So in that situation, most of the time, 90% of the time, you have to go home. Right? Now, there are situations, kabiat sa mga kababayan din natin, na minsan tinatatakan sila ng embassy ng subject to 2-year residency requirement, pero yung kanilang program hindi required. So in other words, there might be a mistake diyan sa embassy in making that restriction. So what I will tell our clients is seek an advisory opinion from the Department of State, or Department of Homeland Security, kung ang job mo ba na inoffer sa iyo o yung program mo requires you to go home. So magugulat ka na lang, Kuya Johan, kahit tinatakan minsan yung passport mo, yung visa mo that you're subject to the 2-year residency requirement, yung pala you're not required to. So those are the situations bakit kinakailangan magkaroon ng 2 years at kailangan bumalik. Now, very interesting, may mga waiver naman, Kuya Johan. At siyempre ayaw nang bumalik dahil siyempre it's going to be a long wait, lalo na kung meron ka ng baby, lalo na kung ang employer is really willing to petition for you, lalo na you are starting a family. But going home for 2 years is a long wait. So what they do is, may mga sitwasyon naman na pwede nating i-waive yan, di ba? So those are the situations, most of the cases that we receive in our office is they ask our law firm to help them in filing those waivers na pwede ba huwag na lang akong umuwi.
Okay, so may paraan pala, attorney. Ang may mga nagtatanong, attorney, regarding that waiver, does the host or the home country, yung for example, sa Pilipinas, meron bang say ang home country in terms of the waiver, or is it the United States? Is it the Department of State who's solely responsible to waive that 2-year residency requirement?
Well, the good thing about the waiver, Kuya Johan, may mga iba't ibang klase ng waiver, di ba? So hindi lang isa yan, kundi there are around 3 or 4 or 5 waivers na pwede bang huwag na lang akong umuwi because meron ako nito. So unang-una yan, to answer your question, Kuya Johan, ito yung may say ang Philippine government. Ito yung no objection from the home country. So sasabihin mo, so meron kang fill upan yan, meron tayong designated agency sa Pilipinas, Kuya Johan, where yung executive exchange visitor program under under Department of Labor, na sila yung nag-assess at nagtatanggap ng mga applications, or they can reject and approve that. But basically, anong ibig sabihin nitong no objection? You're just saying that, pwede ba hindi na ako umuwi dahil my home country does not object me going back, di ba? So, usually yan, kahit funded ng Philippine government yung programa mo, kung no objection naman sila na mag-stay ka na dito na hindi mo kailang umalis, pwede ka pa rin mag-adjust ng status. Yun kasi ang masaklap, Kuya Johan, yung 2 years na yan, right, kung mayroong 2 years residency requirement, kahit nag-asawa ka ng US citizen, right, may anak kang US citizen na over 21, mayroong employer na magpe-petition sa'yo, you cannot adjust status, hindi ka pwedeng mag-green card, hindi ka rin pwedeng mag-extend ng status, or rather, change ng status, gusto mo munang mamasyal sa within the US, hindi mo pwedeng gawin yun dahil, you are subject to the 2 years. Yun ang ibig sabihin yan. Or kahit umuwi ka sa Pilipinas pa, Kuya Johan, may tourist visa ka, hindi ka makakabalik ka agad within 2 years. So you still have to wait there. So once you get this waiver, it's really important. Pwede ka na mag-adjust, pwede ka mag-extend, pwede ka mag-green card. Now, yung no objection, as we mentioned, ito yung participation ng mga consulate dito sa US. Halimbawa sa atin dyan sa Las Vegas, yung mga authentication ng documents mo, halimbawa yung marriage certificate and birth certificate, papa-authenticate nyo po yan sa consulate sa LA, no? Doon sila i-authenticate, then i-forward yung request sa EVP, yung Exchange Visitor Program sa Pilipinas, right, para i-approve. Usually hindi sila nag-approve, Kuya Johan. Kailangan unang-una natapos mo yung programa, hindi yung tipong para kang nag-jump program, right? It's a jump nag-jump program ka na hindi mo tinapos yung programa, umalis ka na at naghanap ka ng trabaho sa ibang employer. Kasi itong mga J-1, Kuya Johan, meron silang work permit, di ba? Authorized to work. And also, they have social security. So, if that happens na hindi mo tinapos yung programa, hindi ka eligible mag-apply ng no objection. Pangalawa, may basis, Kuya Johan, ang no objection mo. Hindi tipong, gusto ko na sa Amerika dahil mas kampante na ako dito, masarap ang buhay dito, You cannot just do that. There should be some basis. Like for example, usually in-approve nila kung nag-asawa ka na ng US citizen or nagkaanak ka ng US citizen. So pwede mo nang i-convince ang Philippine government that, they should issue the no objection. So once that is issued by the Philippine government, then you still have to file the waiver sa Department of Homeland Security na saying that my government did not object me to go home, and ito na yung waiver, and then you have to pay the fees, and then once that is approved, Kuya Johan, pwede ka na mag-green card. So hindi pwede na let's say subject ka ng 2 years residency requirement, nagpakasal ka ngayon, i-file mo yung green card mo. It's not like that. You still have to file for the waiver, get that approved, and then saka ka pala pwede mag-apply ng adjustment of status. So that's one of the most important waiver na ina-avail ng mga kababayan natin na nandito as a teacher, as a medical doctor, or medical doctor, essentially they don't allow that. It falls under the second category ng waiver, yung mga doctors natin, training, pwedeng humingi ng waiver sa federal government. So for example, if you decide na dito ka nag-training or dito ka nag-graduate ng medical doctor, pumasa ka na and everything, and then you are being employed by a hospital sa mga liblib na lugar, di ba? Yung mga wala gaano mga doctors, pwede ka rin humingi ng exemption, but you have to have the US government to endorse you and approve that waiver. So yun yung second exemption, and very common din, Kuya Johan, is yung persecution, right? So sasabihin mo, ayaw ko nang umuwi because at one time we are being targeted by this group of people, right, in my home country in Sulu, right, where I have a business doon. They tried to kill us or destroy us, or sirain yung business namin. I'm being persecuted because I'm a member of this political group or a religious group, so pwede ka rin humingi ng waiver on that basis. So may mga paraan, actually, Kuya Johan, and may mga iba't ibang paraan na humingi ng exemption para hindi na po kayo umuwi sa Pilipinas para i-comply yung 2 years residency requirement.
And how about, attorney, if say for example you're in an industry or isang program wherein pagka umalis ka kamukha ng mga teachers, pagka kulang ng teachers can the sponsoring agency or employer recommend na i-waive yung 2-year residency requirement dahil sabihin nila pagka pinauwi ko itong mga ito wala na kaming teacher o kaya magte-training na naman kami ng panibago. Is that something that can be valid?
The most that the employer can do in that situation, Kuya Johan, is to extend, like for example, maximum of 5 years, so 2 years lang pwede silang extend. The employer can do something about it. But for the purpose of the waiver, there's not so much that the employer can do. So what I tell my clients is to start the process for the green card kasi mahirap yan, di ba? So for example, binibigyan sila ng 5 years or they anticipate that they will be here for 5 years, umpisahan na yung petition sa kanila. Ito yung labor certification kasi walang direct, Kuya Johan, J1 ka, hindi ka automatic na magiging green card in the future. You still have to have your employer petition for you, file a petition for you. And how to do that? You have to file for the labor certification. Diba? You have to advertise, especially now sa mga kababayan natin, mga employers dyan. Alam ko mahirap ang mahirap kumuha ng mga empleyado at this time. Pandemic, maraming ayaw magtrabaho, right? For whatever reason, mahirap mag-recruit ngayon. So, which is very good para sa labor certification process kasi you are advertising that you need you need a teacher, right? At walang nag-a-apply or kung mag-a-apply naman, they are not qualified, they don't like the job, they don't, like the salary. So then you are attesting to the Department of Labor that there's no willing and qualified U.S. citizen, then you start the process for the labor certification, right? And then we'll file the I-140, and hopefully it gets approved. Once that's approved, then bago matapos yung term ng teacher, pwede na rin silang humingi ng waiver on whatever basis that you have, and by that time it becomes available, right? Pwede na silang i-green card, and they will be working with you, for the duration na gusto ninyo, na nakakasundo po kayo. So that's how it should work, Kuya Johan. Sa lahat ng mga J1 or J2 mga kababayan natin nakikinig, you should ask your employer to start the labor certification process already, whether you are subject to 2 years residency requirement or not. Kasi you don't have a lot of time. The filing for the labor certification takes about a year kasi may mga recruitment process yan, Kuya Johan, right? And then also for the I-140, sometimes nagre-retrogress yan. We are lucky that as of last year, ang EB3 sa mga teachers, mga skilled and mga professionals, they are current. Ang problema ng mga J1 is paano kung meron silang restriction, and you have to file for that, for that waiver bago sila makapag-adjust. And hopefully, habang nandito sila, they're already working on the waiver, right? Whether as either as based on persecution, based on the no objection, hindi pwedeng gawin yan while they are on the program, kailangan matapos ang kanilang programa. So either by, ang pinaka-most common dyan is by persecution or pwede ring hardship, pwede rin nilang gawin yan.
Attorney, we've been talking about the teachers, but of course, I'm sure a lot of other mga kababayan natin nandito sa Amerika are nurses. And we would like to throw in that question to you, Attorney. Are nurses, are there programs for nurses also under the J-1 visa, for example, not only to work, but to advance their education, postgraduate degrees or something for the nurses? And if so, when they request for a waiver, yung tinatawag na they are Schedule A, yung pinapag-usapan natin before, does this apply to them? Are they automatically tawag dito, yung hindi na sila kailangan umuwi? Exempted?
Ang nurses, Kuya Johan, is mas madali sa kanila actually ang what do you call is employment, to find an employer and green card, because if forgo yung labor certification, there's always that shortage of registered nurses and physical therapists in the US. So hindi niya tinatanggal yan. Wala na yung labor certification process where the employer is required to advertise, advertise sa newspaper, sa website, and sa kanilang bulletin board and certify that walang US citizen, and you forgo that first step sa mga ibang employees. So once, to answer your question about the J1, usually mga nurses, kuya, yun, direct yun na sila sa I-140, yung petition kaagad, because that is available and current. But there might be some programs sa mga registered nurses natin, if they want to look at the programs list sa USCIS and embassy's website, there might be some programs that fit in their skills and their education. So probably it's more of like furthering their education, no? Or acquiring more skills. Posible rin yan. If there's a way for our kababayan to come here, mahirap kasi yung J1 dahil may restriction yan. It's going to be additional tasks sa inyo, additional fees, additional problem, lalo na kung meron kayong subject ng 2 years. But of course, wanna take the chance, especially if you guys intend to go home anyway. It's okay, to avail of the J1. It's just that what I'm saying is adjusting your status, changing your status in the future is more difficult if you have this 2-year residency requirement. But there's also a way there. Aside from the mentioned kanina na no objection from your home country, endorsement from the federal government, or persecution, pwede yung hardship. Pwede mo sabihin na, let's say, kahit wala kayong asawa na US citizen, pero nagkaanak kayo dito sa US, pwede mo sabihin na I'm single dad or single mom taking care of a US citizen, and my child needs medical attention in the US, pwede bang i-waive na lang niyo yung 2 years residency because I would suffer extreme hardship, right? Or my son or my daughter would suffer extreme hardship. Posible rin yun. So those are the ways, Kuya Johan, para ma-approve, ang inyong waiver for the 2-year residency requirement.
Backtracking a little bit about the family, attorney, yung J2 holders, they are subject to the same restrictions, like go home and then pag na-terminate yung J1 visa, terminated din sila.
Yes, Kuya Johan, nakakabit since they are considered derivative beneficiary of the J1, ang mga J2s like spouse and minor children. That's correct. They are also subject to the 2-year residency requirement if the principal applicant is subject to the 2-year residency requirement. They have to go home before they marry, or they have to apply for the waiver before they can adjust, change the status, or change status in the United States.
It goes without saying that the waiver as well, nakadikit doon din yung family niya, yung J2. In other words, ang mag-a-apply lang ng waiver is the J1 holder, and then if it gets approved na rin yung waiver ng J2.
That is correct. So as long as, of course, they remain derivative beneficiaries. So let's say yung anak mo, dinala mo dito 19 years old and you were here for 5 years, so 23 years old na siya, for example, overstayed and married a US citizen. So the let's say umuwi yung magulang and the J2 stayed here. So pwedeng mag-apply on his own because he's no longer derivative, and just because he already married a US citizen. So pwede siya na mismo mag-apply if the derivative is no longer interested, or rather the derivative already went back home to the Philippines, for example.
Wow, there's been a lot of talk about the J1 visa, and napakaganda, attorney, na itong naging topic natin yun. And I'm sure maraming mga listeners natin worldwide, hindi lang dito sa Las Vegas, San Francisco, or here in the United States. I'm sure marami pa po kayong mga tanong. Paki-comment lamang po dito sa feed na ito. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Amazon Fire TV, and also sa mga website natin, phlvradio.com at sa www.rreeves.com. Mangyari lamang pong magpadala ng inyong mga questions, at we will try our best na maiparating kay Attorney Diza po ang inyong mga tanong. Attorney, maraming salamat for all this information, but meron pa po bang ibang hindi tayo na take up dito sa J1 visa?
Ang advice lang natin sa mga kababayan natin under J1 o J2, especially kung nasa status pa po kayo, right? Ang and you want to stay here in the US, either magtanong na po kayo sa inyong employer mismo, right? Mostly sa mga teachers natin dyan sa Nevada and some part of California. We have some clients here, mga public schools, Kuya Johan, no? Strict ang kakausapin mo, right? And sometimes it's harder for them to decide kasi depende sa budget, blah, 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 tatanungin nila muna. And of course, the labor certification process, we have to guide them as an immigration attorney to do the labor certification process to finally for you to get your green card in the future, lalong-lalo kung wala kayong 2 years restriction. I mean, start now because mahirap po yung nag-start po kayo ng patapos na yung inyong J1 kahit wala kayong waiver, no? Attorney, ang J1 ko this year na lang. Paano natin gagawin labor certification mo? Because the labor certification process will take about a year din. Like for example, lalo kung hindi rin very efficient, na nagpo-provide ng documents ang inyong employer. So I would strongly recommend to talk to your HR now, right? Yung human resource ninyo officer, or yung mismong supervisor nyo if they are, petitioning teachers, to a green card. Kasi may process dyan. And for them, lalong-lalo ng mga walang experience ng pagpapetition ng mga to a green card. And there are, as I said, maraming mga school districts at mga schools that are doing this. So hindi kahit public or private yan, the labor certification, the green card process is feasible sa inyo. So yun lang siguro ang isa sa mga magandang advice natin sa kababayan natin, hindi yung last minute na attorney, paalis na kami next year or in 5 months time, paano po gagawin kahit willing yung employer po ninyo, yung waiting time minsan is going to be hard to deal with the employer kung wala na kayo dito sa US. Baka mamaya bigla nila drop, or isinto yung inyong petition pag wala na kayo dito. So it's better na meron kayong bargaining tools while you're working with them, to pass it, lalo na if they like you as a teacher, as a worker, masipag po kayo and they really want to keep you. They would do anything to keep you, even filing a petition for your green card.
Okay. And mangyari lamang po na kumonsulta sa ating mga kaibigan dyan sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. Attorney, kumusta na po kayo dyan sa San Francisco ngayon? You're already entertaining mga visitors sa office ngayon?
We are, Kuya Johan, but we still strictly implementing yung mask in the office. We are now accepting in-person consultation. But we still recommend Zoom and telephone. So we are open yung ating offices in Los Angeles and in San Francisco where I am based, and also in Makati and China. So yung mga hindi po yung mga hindi po makakapunta sa opisina, we can also do Zoom and telephone consultation. Our office now is charging $100 for a consultation fee, which will be credited towards your contract. For example, kung meron po kayong case na gagawin, and whatever be the agreed amount, the $100 will be credited towards your contract. And of course, pag binanggit po ninyo that you heard us from PHLV Radio, we'll give you a further discount para po sa kontrata ninyo. And of course, you'll be talking with immigration specialists. We are more than about 8 or 9 lawyers in the firm, and we have full support from our offices here in the US and the Philippines and China.
Kaya mga kaibigan, matapos kami magpaalam ni Attorney, hang on because we'll play the ad of our friends from Reeves Immigration Law Group. You'll see our fine attorneys there, and then also ang mga contact numbers so you can get in touch with them. So Attorney, again, maraming salamat po for this wealth of information. I'm sure marami na namang natutunan ng ating mga taga-subaybay ng immigration law on your side. Attorney, I'll give you the floor. Baka mayroon kayong mga gustong batiin dyan or mga announcements from the firm.
Well, maraming salamat PHLV Radio and Kuya Johan for this public service sa ating mga kababayan. Share yung ating mga programa, ng PHLV Radio, maganda lahat. Like our Facebook and our other social media platforms para po makita nila, lalong-lalo ng mga nangangailangan ng immigration dito sa US. In fact, ang mga updates, wala pa ganong ka-updates, Kuya Johan, with regard to immigration reform and the Dreamers. There's a pending discussion sa Congress, but we are praying very soon kung ipapasa to or hindi. That's why it's really important sa mga kababayan natin to subscribe sa aming articles. Meron kaming weekly articles sa Reeves Immigration Law Group. Just go to our website and click dun yung subscription for our updates and our articles and success stories, makikita po ninyo. And also the attorneys, as Kuya Johan mentioned, makikita niyo ang qualifications sa mga lawyers po namin. And again, Sa lahat ng mga viewers and listeners natin, maraming salamat. Stay safe and stay safe always. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Diza. Nanggagaling po sa Reeves Immigration Law Group dyan sa San Francisco, California. And again, we'll play the ad of Reeves Immigration Law Group after the program so you'll see all the information. And then puntahan lamang po ang kanilang website, www.rreeves.com. Nagagaling po sa Las Vegas. Ito po si Kuya Yo from the PHLV Radio Studios sa mainit na Las Vegas. Mabuti pa si attorney dyan. Mukhang he was surprised that when I told him na talagang nag-100 degrees pa rin dito sa Las Vegas.
Nakasweater pa rin kami, Kuya Johan.
Nakasweater pa rin sa San Francisco, California. And to our friends out there in the northern Nevada and northern California, our hearts and thoughts are with you. Alam namin na medyo challenge at matindi ang Dixie Fire at lahat ng mga wildfire dyan sa area na yan, and we keep you in our thoughts. So maraming salamat po, Attorney Diza again, and guys, we will see you next time right here on Immigration Law on Your Side, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific, right here at PHLV Radio. We are streaming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. Maraming salamat po, and we'll see you next time.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Pacific on PHLV Radio.